This city is yours. 20,000 empty seats. Are you fucking sure? Oh, hello, Dan. Didn't see you there. Didn't know you were going to be arriving. Great to see you. Great to have you live on Skype, joining us from somewhere right outside the Etihad, as I've been reliably informed by the wall behind you. How you doing?
I'm all right, yeah. I'm a long way outside the Etihad, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, all roads lead to Manchester, as the saying goes, apparently. For those of you who don't know, Dan Burke is part of the Onefootball newsroom team and an expert on Manchester City, and I believe also a Manchester City fan. Is that all correct, Dan?
Yeah, I'm a City fan, long suffering until quite recently when we got loads of money and started winning stuff.
Yeah, so you started becoming a fan when Sheikh Mansour took over, or when Thaksin Shinawatra took over?
Francis Lee was actually chairman when I first started.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I've got to take you seriously. Good stuff. Are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, because you used to write, I think it was a blog called Blue Moon, is that correct?
That was a podcast that I used to do, Blue Moon podcast. I used to do a blog called Typical City as well. Typical City was very much the sort of the theme of City fandom for a long time, in that City would all have this habit of shooting themselves in the foot, so we call it Typical City. Nice one.
So a real, actual genuine Manchester City fan talking to a genuine Manchester United fan who's not from Manchester, so that puts my street cred a little bit down. Let's talk about the derby then, because I'm kind of annoyed at you guys last night, because there was going to be a real streak off, as I'd like to call it, because United had this 40-game unbeaten home run, and then City had this 29 unbeaten game run over all competitions. But of course, that's kind of gone out the window. How do you feel the game last night went, and do you think it'll affect the derby?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, it was an understrength team that Guardiola went with in that game. Perhaps not as understrength as it could have been. I was expecting, a team of children basically, and there were a few first teamers in there. They didn't play well at all, City. The goalkeeper made a bit of a howler for Shakhtar's second goal. And I don't think City have been playing brilliantly in the past few weeks at all now. The results haven't really reflected that, and they've still been winning aside from last night. But you look at the games against Huddersfield, Southampton, and West Ham. Required late goals coming from behind to win all three of them. And it's just, I don't know if it's going to be the same on Sunday, but I just feel that City have hit a little bit of a slump at the moment, and the performances have been a little bit lacklustre. Perhaps the thing that might work in their favour on Sunday is that United won't sit behind the ball in the way that a lot of other teams have done and defend with 10 men in their own area, because that's something that City have kind of struggled with a little bit recently. But yeah, I'm feeling a little bit pessimistic going into Sunday's game, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Well, you've completely shocked me there, Dan, because not only are you pessimistic going into this derby, you also think that Mourinho's not going to park the bus, which is like the minority opinion at the moment. Everybody's talking about that. I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, it was an understrength side, and I mean, I don't personally think we can read too much into that last result. However, I do think you're right. You've got a point with recent results against Southampton and Huddersfield, because teams have seemingly figured out there is some sort of a way to at least begin to stop City. Because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I stopped watching City games. On Match of the Day, I would just look away recently, because I was getting so depressed at how good City were. And now the last two games were interesting. But I mean, you guys still won. I reckon, I mean, now that Pogba's out especially, we're going to see Fellaini in the mix probably, and we'll probably see a United side sitting quite deep. First time, incidentally, I like the stat, that Jesus has ever lost in a City shirt, which is incredible. But let's talk about the teams then on this weekend's derby. I mean, who would you want from United? Is there any player that could get into your team?
City's team? Well, you'd have to say David De Gea first and foremost, wouldn't you? The man is absolutely phenomenal, as he showed at Arsenal last week. I think we've got a very good goalkeeper nowadays as well, but nobody's even comes close to matching De Gea in world football at the moment. And Pogba would be the other one, I think, who would fit into any midfield in the world. Apart from that, I don't know really. I don't know whether there are any players that I would really want to see in a City shirt. Maybe someone like Marcus Rashford would be good. But apart from that, no. I think maybe Eric Bailly is another one, actually. I think is a superb player who would probably slot right into City's team. But Yeah, generally there aren't too many that I would take, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised with you saying that. I mean, I've got to say, Kevin De Bruyne would be someone I'd love to poach from City. What a brilliant player he's been, and Jesus as well. I mean, quick question, slightly going away from the derby, but you say Marcus Rashford be a player that you would like to see in the squad. What did you make of City getting rid of Kelechi Iheanacho?
I think it was the right decision. I don't think he was. I mean, the fact that Gabriel Jesus is kind of struggling to get in the team a little bit this season shows that there aren't too many places for strikers in Pep's current system. So I think if Iheanacho was still here, he just wouldn't be playing, which is not great for him. And I don't think he's playing an awful lot of Leicester at the moment either. But he's a good young player. I don't know whether he's going to be as brilliant as perhaps we first thought when he burst onto the scene. But if he does, I think City have got a buyback clause in the deal that they sold him to Leicester for, so they can always buy him back for 50 million or something if he truly does come good. But it wasn't one that depressed me too much, to be honest.
Okay, well let's look at the table then. I mean, which is for me very difficult to look at now. I mean, I can't believe you're saying you're pessimistic. Surely, if City win this, is the title race for all intents and purposes over? Do you think?
Yeah, I think it is actually. I mean, we often hear with these games that it's the titles are going to be decided by this game and everything's on the line, and that's rarely the case. But I actually think it is this time around. I mean, if City were to go 11 points clear at this stage of the season, it's not an insurmountable lead, but it's a very big one, and it would require a real big swing in fortunes for both teams to turn that around. Whereas United win the game, it's 5 points and it's well and truly game on. So I think there is a real lot at stake here, and I don't think it's necessarily a must-win for United, but it's certainly a must-not-lose. I think 8 points is a lot more manageable than 11, and as I say, 5 points would be United right back in it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, looking at the two managers, Guardiola and Mourinho, they've played 19 games against each other, in which there were 6 draws and 9 wins for Pep. So the omen is, well, I mean, the stats point into Pep's favour. Do you think we'll see? I mean, earlier on you were mentioning you don't necessarily expect United to park the bus. What kind of game do you think we'll be seeing?
I think it could be quite an open game. Perhaps United will be hoping it isn't quite as open as the one they had at Arsenal last week when their goal was under siege for most of the game. But I think Mourinho certainly showed in the early stages of that game that he's not this sort of totally negative manager that people often paint him to be. And United came out and attacked Arsenal and really forced errors from them early on and scored those 2 early goals. So I think they'd want to score the first goal on Sunday as well. So if they come out and attack City, then City do have vulnerabilities that they can get at there. In terms of the fact that United can't afford to lose this game, or a draw wouldn't be a terrible result for either side, but it certainly suits City a lot better. So I can't imagine why Mourinho would try and set up for a draw in this game, as he's been accused of in recent games, of the one at Anfield, for example. So yeah, I can see it being quite an open game, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it finished 0-0, to be honest.
Well, I really hope it doesn't finish 0-0. The last time I went to a Manchester derby was under Van Gaal, and it was at Old Trafford, and it was 0-0. And I left just thinking, I'd rather, I wouldn't rather City had won, but I wanted to see some goals. It was a very frustrating day. I can tell you that much. But I think now that Pogba's not in the team, he's going to set up a bit differently, because Pogba allows for a much more effective counter-attack because of his range of passing, and you can then have players like Lingard, Martial, and Lukaku just waiting for the counter-attack, give it to Paul, he'll ship it up and he'll find me. Whereas now, with presumably Fellaini in the mix, I could see him maybe playing Herrera, but I reckon he'll go for Fellaini. I don't know, I'm not too sure. I reckon he'll go for 3 at the back with Young and Valencia as wing-backs. They've been doing really well. Remains to be seen, though, if it'll be Herrera or Fellaini. That's going to be the big one for me in terms of what kind of a game we're going to see. But is there any player on current form then that who would worry you? Who is sort of the player that you would say as a defender, if you were a City defender, for instance, we've got to watch out for him?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Fellaini actually, because the past couple of games, City have been really poor in terms of defending set pieces. You conceded a goal against West Ham last weekend from a set piece. Southampton should have scored twice in the first half against them from set pieces. They hit the crossbar with one chance. So if Fellaini does play, I can see that being a real area that United will be looking to target, getting balls into the box from corners and free kicks and that sort of thing, and seeing what he can do, because he's not one for the purists, is he, Fellaini? But he's effective and quite good at what he does. So that could be an area that United might have the edge in. I'm still not sort of wholly convinced by City defensively this season. I think Otamendi's having a very good game. But I read just before we started this actually that apparently Vincent Kompany felt a bit of a niggle. He was supposed to play in the game last night and he didn't play. So we could well be seeing Mangala in the defence on Sunday, which
yes,
read if I'm honest. So yeah, I certainly think United have got something to get at City there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited I hope he's going to play Martial, Lingard and Lukaku together, because I felt they've been doing really well. Although Rashford, Martial is the conundrum that has followed United all season, because I think Lingard's on great form at the moment, and he proved it against Arsenal, but even before that. One last thing to talk about before we go. Michael Oliver, this season, has been in charge of 4 Manchester United games. No, not this season, this year. And 0 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses, 3 penalties awarded against United, and 1 United player sent off. Do you think he'll play any role in the derby?
Oh, I hope so, if that's the case, yeah. I think Arsenal have a bit of a problem with Michael Oliver as well. I think they've got a similarly bad record for him. So I don't know what that's about. But I do recall there was a derby a few years ago. I think it was 2014 possibly. Michael Oliver refereed. He sent off Chris Smalling at the Etihad Stadium. And City won that game 1-0. And there was that incident which I think a few United fans still aren't over, where Joe Hart kind of put his face into Oliver's face and he didn't even get a yellow card for it or anything like that. So I don't know whether he does have some sort of bias towards City, but if that's the case, let's hope it comes out on Sunday.
Okay, well, I hope it doesn't. I hope we see a good match, though. I hope we see goals. If I'm going to be pushed for a prediction, probably would say 1-1. I reckon maybe 1-0 to United, but that's me being optimistic. What's your prediction, Dan?
Well, games like this, I always say I hope football's the true winner, but if football can't be the winner, then I hope City are. So I'll go for 2-1 City. A prediction that I don't entirely believe, but let's see.
Okay, well, let's hope Mangala plays and Jesse Lingard gets a hat-trick. It's great talking to you, Dan. Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna have to put my journalistic neutrality back on now and take this off. But hope we see a good derby on the weekend. All the best of luck to your side, all the best to mine.